Mm. Hey y'all, welcome to the Devon A. Morris Unfiltered Call-In Show. Have a seat. Let's get ready. You have any questions? Come on, call in. Come on to that Discord channel. Do me a favor, get the unfiltered crew some finger snaps. We're ready to get started here. Mondays, 8 p.m. Every single Monday, we're here. I'm excited about it. Are you? Let's get this show started, y'all. The greatest Scrum show on earth. I'll see y'all soon. Enjoy. Hello. Welcome. Hey, this is the Unfiltered Show. I'm your host, Devon Morris here, right? So make sure you like, subscribe, ring the bell so you can get notified. I'll say those things early, but we have an interesting show ahead of us today. What we are talking about is something that I hear all the time. Is spillover okay? That's our topic for today. Most of you hardcore people, you already know the answer to the question, right? But we're gonna talk about it, right? And we'll talk about perspectives and maybe some of the things that you can do to deal with it accordingly, right? And so here's the deal: you're here in the room. Make sure you say hi. I'll give shout outs a little bit later in the show. But first and foremost, let me talk about what's going on. Hopefully you are having a good week, right? For me, I'm having an excellent start to the week, right? I'm in the gym heavy, right? And probably being in the gym heavy is probably really what I want to do because I got some big things happening this year. But outside of that, man, it's just good life, right? So it's an interesting thing because today I had some interesting meetings, right? And just today I wasn't able to get my real big point across that I need to accomplish. So I'm a little frustrated about that. But outside of that, everything is good, man. Everything is good. Just doing a lot of work on, psychological safety and in intrinsic motivation, innovative work behaviors, organizational climate, just stuff to really gain an understanding of the work that we do and how things impact us, like job characteristics, job design, those kind of things, right? And so, just kind of figure out ways that I can hit you all with stuff that's a little bit deeper than just talking about ceremonies or events, stuff like that. So that stuff is coming, not in the near future, but in the future, because it's all PhD stuff. So I want to make sure that the show starts to trend in those kind of directions that we get deeper and deeper into those topics as I gain more knowledge about it myself. So kind of constant journey of learning, as you know, nothing should be surprising. For any of you all about that fact that there's always a constant journey happening. Um, let's see. This week I got an ACSM class. July 17th is going to be a actual CSP SM. So a certified Scrum professional, Scrum Master path. Um, that'll be mid-July. So that's always an interesting thing because I do that once or twice a year. And then the other big thing is the actual, bankable breakthrough. The bankable breakthrough is going to be August 17th, 18th, 19th this year. And we're going to start really advertising for it and everything else. Just initially, just inviting Beard Eagle alumni and then taking it from there. So just really, really good stuff, right? My normal ginger beer, last one I got. I'm going to have to figure out how to get some more. So, you know, it's just a good thing. So now let's tell me what's going on with you all. Let me know how's it be, how's it going, whether you're on LinkedIn or you're actually right here on YouTube. Say hello in the chat, right? Now, for those that don't know, the show works in a real simple way. You come in and ask your questions, Scrum, Agile, entrepreneurship, all those things, right? And I'll answer them, whether you put them in the chat or you decide to join the show. And I'll give you a link to join the show later. But a lot of people drop their questions in the chat. I haven't received any questions in email. I'd normally go ahead and drop those questions here too. But the idea is that if you have questions about Scrum, Agile entrepreneurship, I'll answer them for you as best that I can. And just remember, you know, I'm not a lawyer or anything like that. So, my opinions are solely my opinions, right? It doesn't represent Bearded Eagle or any other organization that I'm working for as a I don't know why I'm saying that. I've never said that before, but it just sounded good to say. It really did. I just felt like, okay, this is something good to say, right? Uh, hey, Patrick, how you doing? I'm actually doing amazing. We got one of those topics tonight that is just a normal everyday topic, right? So I'm comfortable with it because I always get the questions around it, So I'm pretty enthused. So hopefully things are going really well for you. Hopefully you are getting some clients, man, building that consultancy, right? So that's a good thing. All right, so here's the deal. Let's go ahead and begin this topic, right? Because I want to go ahead and get into it so then we can talk about it. Our topic for the day is spillover okay? Some people like to call spillover carryover. Whatever title you want to put on it, it isn't anything really complicated because all spillover is that unfinished or incomplete work, classically from some sprint. Okay, a phase, a time period, but it's iteration, but it is unfinished, incomplete work, right? That gets carried over or automatically goes into the next sprint, iteration, phase, whatever you call your time period. It just goes into that next period, right? Um, it becomes a part of the planned work for that next time period, right? And people, classically will hopefully consider that as a part of whatever plan that they're making. But literally, it's that work that just kind of goes over. Now, it can go over for many reasons, and this is something that people are really, really used to happening. But let's talk about a couple things here, right? So, and then you understand a perspective, okay? The first perspective is in most of these cases, they're talking about Scrum. And here's the deal from a Scrum theoretical ideal perspective, okay? When you're in a sprint is protected. You are supposed to commit to what you believe you can get done. And that's all you're supposed to do. Now, when the sprint is going to be over and there's unfinished work, that unfinished work should go back into the product backlog to be prioritized accordingly. The work that you didn't finish may no longer be priority. So it should go back into the product backlog to be prioritized accordingly. Then in sprint planning of the next sprint, the next time period, you will decide whether it's still high enough priority for you to actually finish that work. So it gives you an opportunity to make a decision about that work instead of what people classically do with spillover, just consider the next sprint to be an extension of this sprint. Okay. And people deal with these things in different ways, but there's the ideal situation, right? Now, our team's going to have spillover. Well, I'm going to say they're going to have unfinished work. I'm not going to call it spillover because the idea is there's an automatic commitment normally with spillover that you're going to finish that work in the next sprint. Sometimes this happens because of handoff. Sometimes it happens because unknown situations came up. There could be many, many reasons why it happened. Something went wrong with the team, whatever it was, right? So let me give you some ideas um, about how it happens, okay? Probably one of the biggest thoughts on why it happens is underestimation. That's probably the biggest thought that people think about when spillover happens, they say, okay, well, the team didn't estimate correctly, right? Um, that's usually one of them that I hear about pretty often. Okay. And there's normally a big complaint around that, right? Story points and all these other things, and then trying to find ways to split it to maintain the velocity. You start running into all kinds of things, but the idea is sometimes due to underestimation, that thing ends up being bigger than what was expected, right? And there could be reasons for that, right? Like a piece of acceptance criteria wasn't clear enough, right? You needed to solve the problem a particular way. You got into it and ran into some technical debt, right? There's all kinds of reasons why it could happen, right? Let me ask you a question, right? For those that are here, if you think about spillovers, what is the number one reason why you see spillovers happen? Okay, as I talk about the second one, right? Another reason why spillovers happen, which happens a whole lot, is dependencies, right? A perfect example of a dependency that may exist is you commit to something that has reliance on somebody that's not in this team, that dependency over there, right? And they're not aware that you made this commitment. And then when you let them know, even though you let them know immediately, they don't have time to get it done. Or they make a commitment and then don't get it done in time for you to complete the work. That's another reason why. So that's two reasons why spillovers are caused, right? What is your number one reason why spillovers are caused, right? I'm not done with that, right? The third one is something I just mentioned, scope change, right? Scope change is a big, there's nobody that comes to this show right here that's been involved with in the agile space longer than for more than 6 months, that believes scope is static. We're dealing with complex adaptive systems. A lot of times customers don't know exactly what they want until you start putting things in their hands. So it just becomes one of those things where scope changes is like bam, an issue that happens fairly immediately. It just is what it is. You can't get around it, right? So scope will change on you and will change on you in a heartbeat, right? Um, what are some other reasons that you all can think of, right? I got another one, right? Um, Resource constraints, right? Something happens with the resources on this team. Um, Whatever that thing is, it just causes a problem. Okay, it causes the workload to shift on a sprint within a sprint for some strange reason, right? And so that could be one of those things that happen. That's probably enough. I would say maybe a fifth one is uncertainties. Because a lot of times when you're making commitments to complex adaptive systems or work that is based on complex adaptive systems, there's a bunch of unknowns, and with those bunch of unknowns, there are risk. There could be technical challenges. There could be factors that have nothing to do with anybody in the company. It could be a factor that's external to the company that has an impact on you, right? And if that has an impact on you, what happens to what you're doing? You may not be able to get that thing done. Okay, it's just really that simple, right? So spillover is huge. Spillover is huge. It happens all the time. Um, yeah, yeah. I just it's one of those things where it happens so much. I mean, I don't go into a class. I don't I haven't gone into one coaching job where spillover wasn't something that came up in one way or another. Questions about it or just came up flat out for whatever reason and we're debating or there is debates on how we need to deal with it, right? So, that is one way to deal with it, right? So that is one thing to think about, right? So then if I take another angle to this, right? Right? Um, hmm, how do you deal with it, right? How do you manage it, right? If there is going to be, if it's going to happen, and you really just can't get around it, which I don't believe you can get around it. Okay. Unfinished work is going to happen. Spillover, though, probably not, because normally with spillover, it is the connection of it being to the fact that it's automatically going to the next sprint and we're automatically committing to it. That's normally where spillover comes in at. But like I said, you can be, unfinished work is going to happen. So, what are some strategies on how you deal with that, right? What are some strategies on how you deal with that? Um, Before I ask that question, though, what do you think is the number one reason why people have spillover? Why teams have spillover? What's the number one reason that you think, right? But while you're typing that, let me start talking about some of the actual, I think, things to mitigate that, the things to help with it, right? First and foremost, I'm gonna throw out prioritization matched up with focus, because I think prioritization allows you to be able to focus on the highest priority items. And then if you don't get the lower priority items done, no harm, no foul, right? No harm, no foul, right? Then you have a few less complaints at that point, right? But that's not it, right? Um, when I said underestimation, what people would probably say, more accurate estimation would help. But I would not even include that as a way to actually manage it, because I don't know how you accurately estimate, right? Can you get into ranges of estimates that fall into being somewhat right? Yes. But people think if you get better at estimation, is going to help you with spillover. That's just not the case, right? Because you're really not going to truly get better at estimating, because you're always working on something different. And since you're always working on something different, we typically estimate when we know the least amount of information. So I don't know how you're going to deal with that situation. That's the reason why I say prioritization and focus is probably more important than you being an accurate estimator. Does that make sense? Another way to deal with it is making sure that you have a grasp on it. When I say a grasp on it, what I really mean is that you're monitoring the situation, or at least you're seeing where things are at, and you're communicating as much as possible where things are at. Now, when I say communicating it, I'm not saying you're doing a bunch of status reporting, right? What I'm really saying is having a high level of transparency. Having a high level of transparency, right? Because having a high level of transparency allows everyone to monitor where we're at. It allows for communication to really be where it needs to be. So, and then we can deal with things accordingly. Does that make sense? And so, realistically, continuous monitoring and communication is key, but I think that it really boils down to transparency, right? But in transparency, to me, you have to know what's going on, and you have to make sure you continue to let people know. It's almost like as a scrum master, you know, if I created a release burn up chart, I make sure that I pass it to people, so and then they have it. I make sure it's available to people so they have it, right? And that was usually a part of my communication process, right? So that's the reason why I say making sure you're monitoring it and you are communicating what's going on so people are ready. Um, Scope management, um, you know, stuff that can tends to come in. you know, the story itself and its acceptance criteria. Just however you can manage that scope so it doesn't explode on you, right? Sometimes a team gets into a situation, and part of what you got to do to manage scope is to be negotiable, right? Invest, right? Invest in good user stories, right? And the N stands for negotiable. And so realistically, negotiable means the ability to accommodate. And sometimes you jump in there and you realize that this one little piece of acceptance criteria here has made this thing huge, right? It's super complex. Maybe we can pull that thing out, right? We can pull that thing out and complete the rest of it, turn that into another story, and deal with things accordingly. So you got to find ways to manage scope so then it doesn't get out of hand on you, right? You just don't want it to get out of hand. That's the real key, right? Let's see. Is there anything else that I really want to say? Um, I'm gonna say, the other side of transparency inspecting and adapting. I'm gonna say inspecting and adapting in your retros, um, and in your reviews, right? Your review, you get kind of product feedback, and I think in getting product feedback, you know, part of the things that could come up, um, could help stakeholders understand uh, that they need to be more available to you, right? To make sure that they can give you the right direction on certain things if they have the knowledge of certain things that need to be done. So literally, when I think of ways that you can improve, retrospective heavily because that's lessons learned around the process. But sometimes a review might be helpful too, right? In terms of how you're inspecting and adapting, right? And so always important. Um, Another thing that could help is empowering the team. I mean, we understand collaboration happens, communication happens, but team empowerment, right? Because it's like the ability to say no is huge. The ability to say no, we can't change that. The ability to say, or at least to negotiate, right? That, okay, if this happened, then this happens, right? You want to make sure that team has their voice, and empowering them helps them to have the voice so they will communicate. And that communication is absolutely key. But a lot of teams don't communicate because they're not empowered. They don't feel like they have the right to, or they're a little bit nervous about doing it, right? And so those are, what did I say? That's maybe five different ways of dealing with managing, this whole spillover thing, right? We could do the normal thing and just be agile, understanding it's just going to happen and we're going to deal with it accordingly. But that doesn't always feel good, for the powers that be or people that's around you trying to do this. So just know that and be okay with that. And it'll turn out to be okay. It'll turn out to be all right. Now I have a couple people that have dropped things here just to make sure. Um, I see Nomi says, and I'll drop it in the chat because of LinkedIn I can't show it, so I'll drop it here on my side. But this is from Nomi. Unrecognized cross dependencies is something that I've seen as well, right? Absolutely, dependency is one of those things that just happens to you, and usually ain't much you could do about it, because by the time you tell the other team, it just it's too late, right? And then this other comment that I'm going to drop here is from Cynthia Davis, I do believe. Yeah, Cynthia Davis. Let me drop it here. Team members sometimes don't know how to manage all the tasks on their plate, right? Resulting in project tasks being a lower or no priority. Yeah, having to sometimes they just don't understand that, and they just got to learn. They just got to learn. So that's the reason why those retros definitely are really really important, for you to actually have. And then here, let's see, underestimating and change of priorities when also have to attend unplanned production issues, since our team also deals with those. So it's it's technically a scope change for the sprint. So I would agree with that, Addy, for sure. Just another one of those things. So realistically, all things we talked about, all normal things when it comes to spillover, but the key here is that it's going to happen. It's not abnormal for spillover to happen for, any team. Well, I'm going to rephrase that. I'm sorry. It's not unusual for unfinished work to happen. But unfinished work doesn't necessarily have to turn into spillover and be an automatic commitment for the next sprint. You should actually have the right to make a commitment to that old work, even though you didn't finish it, right? There could be many reasons why you didn't finish it, or you just could have been lazy, but you still should have the right to make the commitment. We know that people that make commitments do a better job at getting work done, right? And what I classically see, which is important for you all to understand, when I find that management has made spillover or a scrum master, whoever, have made spillover a normal thing, it has an impact on the organizational climate, right? Don't think about the organizational climate as being the same as organizational culture. The organizational climate is the current weather, the current behaviors that are happening, which could be very different than the normal behaviors of the culture, right? And so if people are saying to you, hey, our organization does Scrum, and that's what your culture is doing. And then you have a supervisor who says, hey, the spillover is automatically going to the next sprint. You got to get it done. That's a climate issue at that point, right? That's a behavior. That's a weather change that is very different. Understand that your organizational climate could have a huge impact on your psychological safety, right? At least how they feel in terms of psychological safety. And for, especially if you're working with offshore teams, you might end up in a situation where they don't speak up because of it. Um, and that's not something you want, right? So very, very, very important. So that being said, I think that's our topic, spillover, right? I think we're good to go in terms of that. It's nothing complicated. You just got to find ways to deal with it. I don't know how you get away from it. Okay. So on that note, we're going to push that spillover thing to the side and we're going to move on. Let me say hi to folks. Hey, Lizzie, how you doing? Hopefully you're good. Let's see, as usual. Hey, T, how you doing, man? And then I got Patrick here. What's going on with you, Patrick? Hopefully you're doing good. Addie, how you doing? Look like everybody's here. Everybody's fine. Nomi, Cynthia, hopefully you all are good to go. But that's our topic, right? So here's what I do. So you all know if you're not familiar with the show. On YouTube, you are welcome to join me live on the show. What I'm going to do right now is I am grabbing a link for you, and this link is for you to join the show live. You do not have to join the show live to ask a question. You don't have to do that, right? So if you have a question that's urgent, I would say, hey, join the show live and let's talk about it. So I'm going to drop it on YouTube and I'm going to drop it on LinkedIn as well. So then it's available for anybody to come and join. Now, if you join the show, just make sure you turn down and you don't try to watch the show at the same time that we're going through this, because then we'll get a nice echo. We don't want that. And just come with a question that you have, and we'll work through it one way or the other. Now, here's the deal. Next thing is you are also welcome to drop your actual questions in the chat. So if you have a question at all, just drop it in the chat. I'll go through the chat questions and answer those as best I can as well. So and then we can get that done as well and out the way for you. So you're good to go. I will also repeat to you, if you're new to the show, we have over 1,000 subscribers. That's a good thing. And on top of that, I need you to go ahead and make sure you like the video, right? I'll pull that down. Make sure you subscribe, okay? And then click the bell for any notifications. I want you to do that as well because ultimately, it's a small click for you, but it means a lot for us in terms of the algorithms and everything else, right? So the show is growing and we're, taking our time with it. I don't even advertise this thing because it's really just to answer your questions. And once it gets to be too many people, it'd be much harder to answer your questions. So on that note, whatever questions you have, you can certainly welcome to start dropping them in the chat. While we're at it, I want to make sure that I remind you all about something that is important for us to talk about. I'll go ahead and pull it up on the screen so then you can at least have that in mind as well. And I don't have a link for it over there, but I'm going to go ahead and find that link real quick so then I can actually put it up on the screen for you to see. And maybe I won't find it over there, so I'll find it over here. Let's see. make sure that you don't forget this one big thing that we've been talking about for some time here, and I'll show it to you so then you can see it. And some of you all that are here, there's many of you all here that's already registered, but don't forget about the bankable breakthrough, right? August 17th through the 19th. And this is where we're going to ignite your passions and charge your profits, or basically turn your passion into profit. That's what we're doing, right? And so it's going to be 3 full days of, all kinds of things. So if you're a coach, author, speaker, entrepreneur, business owner, just all those kind of things. I believe that this will be transformational for you. There's limited number of spots, um, but I haven't started advertising this thing yet. I'm making sure that I give this community about a month before we start advertising, and then I'll start pushing it out there for the rest of the world to join. And then once we fill up, that's it, because there's only a certain number of people that's going to be allowed to actually come. Okay, so just know that up front. So the bankable event, August 17th through the 19th. So um, and I'll click it. Well, I can't click that. There's a price, small fee associated with it, but I think you'll be okay with that small fee. I think you'll be okay. It's not much of a fee. It's like $97, and then 197 if you want the VIP video stuff like that. It's gonna be super fun. I'm excited about it. I got some people that's really super excited about it, and I'm getting the lineup together for it as well because I plan to have some guest people there too. So it should be great. Should be amazing. And then I got a bunch of amazing stuff to do after that too. So that being said, what else? Any questions? Let me double check the actual links, LinkedIn and the like, to double check to see if y'all have any questions, and then we will take it and go from there. Maybe this one of those nights where y'all don't care. You already got all your questions answered. Hey, if you do, you do, right? I'm good to go with that, right? I'm okay with that. I don't have no complaints about that at all. Um, but it's one of those things where today wasn't a spillover topic today. I got some stuff, y'all. I'm actually doing some really, really amazing stuff around psychological safety and intrinsic motivation. And the stuff that I'm putting together with the latest academic um, knowledge is actually pretty sweet. It's actually pretty sweet. I think you all are going to be quite impressed by it. I will definitely present some of that on the show. People have been telling me to write a book, especially the client that I'm working with. You should be writing a book, man. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun, but I can't say that book is going to be out this year. We'll see. I'm too busy doing a little bit of everything. So I ain't having nothing but fun, right? So that being said, let's see. We double check on my LinkedIn, see if we have any questions over there. And then I'll check on my YouTube, see any questions here. Nothing on LinkedIn. And then none here. So y'all done had a couple weeks where y'all ain't got no questions for me. Maybe life is just that good. I should have some questions for y'all. Here's my question. What do y'all want to talk about next week? Matter of fact, what do y'all want to talk about the next 2 weeks? What topics do you think are some pressing issues to deal with from an agile perspective, right? Agile Scrum perspective. What do you all think? Whatever you think, drop it in the chat. Only reason why I say that because it's like I want to talk about metrics, but metrics is so boring at times, right? I just be like, I don't really want to talk about that. I think it's gonna kill them. I don't want to kill y'all, right? I have a ACSM class, and it's one of those things where people who have been trained by me, we give them way more knowledge than what the learning objectives state in a certified Scrum Master. We actually give them way more stuff, right? And then I have people come to the ACSM class, which is the next level up, and they're not prepared. they're not prepared. So I have to spend the very first day of the ACCSM classically bringing everybody up to speed because you have a lot of people that aren't prepared, right? And so I'm just like, wow, this is crazy, right? This is crazy. And so now I'm done with that first day at ACSM. Now we get into facilitation and everything else because a lot of questions that people have be, questions that should have been really talked about in a CSM, right? That could have been solved there. And when you've been in Scrum a year, you probably should have run into a bunch of things. And then you just have people who don't necessarily get to run into the same kind of stuff. And so I always have to say to people that somebody's 1 year experience may not have the same density as somebody else's 1 year experience, right? And so with me, whenever I was hiring somebody or interviewing somebody within an organization, I was always looking for the density of experience, not the years of experience, because years of experience never did equate to density for me. And so I want people who have had experience being in the wars, being in the battles, being right in front of the firing squad, right? That's what I want. People who have that density, if that makes sense. I don't know if y'all know what I'm talking about. Density of experience. You understand what I'm talking about when I say that, right? And so for me, the questions I would ask anybody in an interview would be around density, about understanding the types of experiences that they had that would show me that they've done above and beyond the true basics, right? And so it's one of those things where I'm trying to get at that density. Um, and there's ways to get at that density if you've been around Scrum, right? Um, but the idea is that I don't look, I'm not, people lie about the number of years that they've been doing something, or they could have been doing Scrum 10% of the time, while they're, worked the past 5 years. 10% of the time they're using Scrum, when somebody could have been using Scrum for 1 year, right? And they working, 50 hours a week using Scrum. That's what I mean by density of experience, right? And I'd rather have that person that's been in the battle for an entire year doing Scrum for that 50 hours, and so, it's just a different thing, right? And again, that's all this experience. Am I crazy when I say density of experience, y'all? Do y'all understand what I'm saying? Like literally, because it's a big difference, right? Um, that is so Lizzie gave a good topic here. How to empower the team, practical tips. That's a good topic. Yeah, that's a good topic. I think I think a good topic is density of experience. Scrum density. Scrum density. I'm gonna write these down. Scrum density, right? And how do you improve your Scrum density? Improve Scrum density. I like that, right? Yeah, I think that is really, really um an amazing possible topic there. How to empower teams, right? The only problem I have, y'all, let me tell you the problem I have. My handwriting is so bad that I may not be able to read this later. That is so crazy, right? How to empower your team. Practical tips. It's just interesting, right? It's just very, very interesting. So let's see. Um, let's see. You need to expand on that topic. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Scrum density is a good topic, right? It is a challenge to get the team doing reviews because the work is sometimes just development for the entire sprint. Testing would be the next sprint. You're doing waterfall. I mean, adding. Okay, so what you're saying, and tell me if I'm wrong, but what you're fundamentally saying is this, Addy. Tell me if I'm wrong. You have sprint number one here. You have sprint number two here, right? So sprint number one, sprint number 2. So I'm going to call this one 1, call this one 2. And what you're saying is you have a story, you do the development here, you do the testing here, and you don't really have anything for the review until this point right here. That's what I hear you saying to me, right? Now, Addy, well, let me ask people here. What would your recommendation, Addy? I done pressed too many buttons. Let me let all that stuff stop, right? So what would your recommendation for Addy be if you have a situation where it's hard to have a review because your developers, there's nothing to show, okay? What would your recommendation be for Addy, right? My recommendation would be to make a commitment to smaller stories where you can actually finish the testing, right? When you are estimating, you should be including both development and testing. From an IT perspective, assuming that development and testing is the only things that's in your definition of done, but you should be including everything that's in your definition of done. And that should include the testing activities. Okay. So when you really think about it, if I have a story that takes 2 weeks to develop and it also takes 2 weeks to test, and I'm doing 2 week sprints, that's an epic at that point. That epic should be divided into something smaller that can be done in one sprint. So you're missing the invest criteria of it being small enough to be completed in one single sprint. So if I'm you, I would first work with the team on how we can split our stories in a way where we can get value at every single sprint. Addy, you have to remember, one of the actual core elements of Scrum is to deliver working product every single sprint. You're not delivering working product every single sprint right now. And the problem that you end up having is you're not getting feedback. Now you're pushing your feedback loop further out, right? And so you want to be able to pull your feedback loop in closer. Smaller loops of feedback is what you want in terms of agile. So when you're in a situation when you're getting to the place where you're not getting product feedback every single sprint, you're missing out on opportunities, right? You're missing out on opportunities. And this is an interesting thing, right? So just make sure that you say to yourself, hey, what can we do to be able to get work done? Matter of fact, don't even say to yourself, in your next retrospective, do yourself a favor. Ask the team, what can we do? We had a problem with things are going over into the next sprint, a spillover, right? So the question is, what do we need to do to complete stories in one sprint? And somebody else suggests making smaller stories, or you suggest it, right? And then make sure you use, if you're having refinement sessions, use your refinement sessions to make them smaller, because it's likely your refinement sessions include your devs. Um, and so if your refinement sessions include your devs, that means that while you're having conversations around it, you can actually go ahead and estimate while you're there, and then determine, you probably know right now what's the right size story to go into a sprint. You probably know that in your team, a 8, a 13, or maybe a 21 is the smallest thing that y'all can take, or the largest thing that you can take in. If the number's bigger than that, we got to break it down. So just make sure you have something that's small enough to be completed in a single sprint, right? Yeah, mix code reviews to mix, add code reviews to mix where they can share knowledge. Yeah, that helps, right? Because you pass knowledge on to your testers. Put yourself in a position where you're thinking the testers can start their testing process, you know, by the second day of the sprint. Um, Start thinking about how to improve your engineering practices. Automation would be helpful. And I say automation so you can build regression testing in some degree. It becomes harder and harder to manually test it. I'm assuming that you're manually testing as well. So I'm making assumptions here, and I could be wrong. But the idea is that there's lots of ways to improve. But I think the first step that I would take is trying to pull in smaller stories. You do that, and that's going to be really helpful for you. Yeah, it'd be whole. It'd be super. You'd be happy by doing it that way. So I would be thinking definitely, hey, let me go ahead and make sure that I think of this thing this way. And you think of it that way, you'll be perfectly fine. You'll be so good to go, it'll be ridiculous. Be super ridiculous. And you'd be like, oh, that was great. All right, so other questions that we may have here. Other questions. Sound like y'all good to go. Maybe, I don't know. I'm over here just, I'm always good to go. I don't know why people would ever think I'm not good to go. But I think that was a good question because that question ties directly into spillover because a lot of times the spillage happens because of things like, hey, the developers get 5 points and the testers get 5 points, or the testers aren't really estimating at all. When your definition of done, here's a problem. You should have a definition of done that includes all the skills that the team has. So, and then, when you have a story that's small enough, it takes care of it. So, but people do still do other things like have user stories that's from the perspective of the actual people that's doing the work. Like it's not a user story at that point, right? So these are just things you just got to deal with. All right, let me double check, see if any questions from my other side of the house. Let's see. Maybe. Let's see. Let's grab this question from Nomi, and I'm gonna drop it in the chat. But this one is specifically from Nomi, and I'm gonna drop it in the chat. So give me a second because let's see. Let's drop that in the chat. Again, this is from Nomi, and we'll read it so that everybody can see it. One of the issues that I've experienced a lot that leads to spillover is estimation. Two things I found very difficult. Do you estimate spikes? Okay. And two, using work days as story points. All right, so Nomi, let's talk. Okay. So problem number one. And Nomi, think about this, right? What is a spike? That's the first question you got to ask here. What is a spike? Okay. Now, when you think about what is a spike, my definition of a spike is that it's setting aside time to do research. Now, I'm assuming that that is your definition. It's something where you're doing some research. It could be technical in nature, but it's something where you're doing some research, right? Now, think for a second. When it comes to research, how do you estimate research? Think about it, right? Like it's research. How do you estimate research? And the answer is you can't estimate research, you time box research. So with a spike, what you should be doing is saying to yourself, for this spike, we're only going to spend 4 hours on this spike and that's it. You time box that spike, okay? So, and then, when you get to the end of that time box, it's like, I need to make a decision about what's going to happen next. We either solve the problem or we need to bail and figure out something else to do. So, the first thing is understand what a spike is, and that is virtually impossible to estimate it. So, you got to time box it, okay? Now, your second question was really simple. Using working days / hours as story points. Okay, so first thing to really say is that story points is not equal to hours, especially working days, right? There is this misnomer that you can normalize story points, okay? And you cannot normalize story points. You have to understand that somebody's as you would say, 5 hours worth of story points or 5 story points would not be equal to another team's 5 hours or story points. You understand? But why is that? One of the biggest reasons why you can't take hours and make hours equal to story points is it becomes a false equivalency. And a lot of people want to just deal with the false thing. But story points aren't equal to hours. When you make them equal to hours, you lose the number one benefit that you get with story points, and that is the relativity that is associated with them. So, story points are supposed to be relative estimation. When you're actually doing hourly estimates or you try to convert them into hours, you are trying to do estimates based on precision, not based on accuracy. Story points are estimates that focus on accuracy, while hourly estimates are estimates that focus on precision. I'm not saying don't use them, just understand their limitations because story points isn't perfect either. But the idea is that if you make story points equal to hours, you might as well just use hours. Okay? You're doing this false equivalency, which doesn't work. So that's really the problem, Nomi, is you're making story points equal to hours. That's not what we're supposed to do. Okay. And I'll write that down. Maybe I need to have a session on story points. Okay. Story points, right? I'm gonna write it down. Story points, right? Story points being equal to hours. Okay. I'm gonna write that down. That's another topic, right? So hopefully that helps, Nomi. But the idea is the same. Story points on equal to hours, and deal with them spikes that time by time boxing them. Okay. Then let's see, Addie. Yeah, we'll bring those suggestions to the table. They have said to me it is really hard to break things down. Okay. All right. So, Addie, can I ask you a question? Are you doing software development? Likely, the answer to that is yes. Code is written one line at a time. Code is written one line at a time. I'm a mainframe developer. I started as a mainframe developer. And as a mainframe developer, I could break something down that could get done in 2 weeks or less. Come on. You're not talking about mainframe developers, Addy. You're likely talking about object-oriented developers. Now, here's what I'm going to say to you, Addy, that you need to understand. And I want to be real clear about this. What language are you using to write code? What language are you using? Right? What technology are you working on where they can't break things down into smaller pieces? Because other companies can. So why can the Amazon and Googles of the world do it and your team can't? That's culture. That's a team problem. That's a team problem. It can be done. It can be done. I guarantee you it can be done. Especially if it was software. If you're talking about building a spaceship that go 0 to 60 and can go straight up and straight down, like no gravity exists, then I think that's pretty hard. I don't think you get that done in a couple weeks. Okay, so this right here, I think you just need to understand that it can be broken down. They just lack the innovative work behaviors that would allow them to be able to break it down. And there are factors that impact people's innovative work behaviors. You are working with IT knowledge workers. It is a prerequisite for IT knowledge workers to have innovative work behaviors. It's a prerequisite. Like, how do you work in IT and not be innovative in the way that you do your work? Like, literally, I'm not trying to laugh here. It's just the truth. Just think to yourself, these are people who work with their brain. If you're working with your brain, there's certain levels of creativity or what I'm going to call innovation. IT knowledge workers they have to have innovative work behaviors. Part of that innovative work behaviors is I got a problem here that's a really big thing. How do I break this thing down into smaller pieces so we can deliver something of value? So I would be investigating why they can't be innovative, why they can't think about their work in more innovative ways. That's what I'd be investigating. Does that make sense, Addie? Hopefully, I don't sound crazy. It's crazy. Who comes on the show and talks about innovative work behaviors? That's crazy. I'm watching you. Anyway, so that's my point. So on that note, looks like everybody's good. Looks like we're all happy here. Looks like we're making it happen. I'm making it happen because I'm getting some stuff I need to get. Making life be good, right? Let's see. David, what suggestions did Devon give? I don't know, David, what suggestions I gave. About what? About Addie stuff? Yeah, Addie can help you out, right? On that, David. I think you know, I think Addie, you need to really investigate why your team can't be innovative. Matter of fact, if you work in a big organization, go find another team that does it. Go find another team that can take big things, a similar kind of work, and break it down into smaller pieces. Go find another team. If you're in a big organization, right? Talk to one of the younger younger devs and ask them if they can think about ways that they can, if everybody was going to get $1 million bonus if they can deliver something in 2 weeks to the client, what sliver of work could they deliver that would actually work? That would be working software. What sliver would they deliver? I guarantee they can think about something. They can think of something, right? Guarantee you, right? So for me, back in the day, like years ago, that was acceptable to me, like 2007. In today's world, with all the great tools we have and all the experience that people have in terms of this kind of work, you can break things down. You want to find ways to meet that invest criteria with your stories. You can do that. You probably you probably got the ability to get it in. Trust me, right? There's somebody in the building that thinks a little bit out of the box. So innovative ways of working is what you want to think about. Okay. All right. So that being said, any I think it's time. So on that note, I'm gonna say thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been a pleasure. It always is a pleasure. I always had the greatest of time coming here and doing my thing with you all. So make sure that you all try those suggestions and let me know how it works for you. It's always good to get feedback because sometimes I'm wrong, right? What I've experienced may not work for you, right? It may not, right? But if it doesn't, it's okay. I'm always about running experiments and trying to figure out how to make sure things are great, things are happening, and then going from there. So just such a good thing. All right. So on that note, I think in the future, my next thing should be story points being equal to hours. Like that's the topic for real, right? So once again, I will say to you, I appreciate everybody here. You know how we do. If you like the content, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe, make sure you click that notification button so you know when things are going off here, so you know what's happening in terms of this. So please go ahead and do that for us. But beyond that, I'm going to say, look, you all absolutely enjoy the rest of your week. Do something wonderful and great for yourself, right? Make sure you smile at least once a day. And then I'll see you next week. And next week, we're going to talk about story points being equal to hours. Let's talk about it, okay? Look, y'all have an amazing time. I will see y'all on a rebound. Hey, Hey, peace, everybody. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.